Yeah, this is part two. Justin Trudeau says people are free to have their religious beliefs. I beg to differ. I don't think people are always free to have their religious beliefs in secular liberal countries. Uh, Secular liberal countries, they're okay with going and taking resources from the Eastern world. They're okay with setting up military bases in the Eastern world. They're okay with participating in wars and funding proxy wars and civil wars and creating a refugee crisis. And then when they bring over the refugees and immigrants here, they put their foot down and say, yeah, you can, yes, I'll admit it. Yeah, there are certain religious freedoms that we have here, but I wouldn't say in totality that people have complete religious freedom and freedom of speech. And two or three quick examples is no, not every Islamic belief. Some Islamic beliefs have almost become taboo because of the pressure from governments and media and intelligence and security agencies, and criticism of Israel, right? And criticism of the LGBTQ narrative. This very discussion that we're having.
We're free to have their religious beliefs. Within all that, we have to make sure we are standing up and defending everyone's rights within the community. That includes the right to be who you are and to love who you love. Understand?
Love who you love. I kind of debunked that in the last video, but another funny example I saw was love is love. Okay. Well, water is water. Why don't you just drink from the toilet, right? So not every love is allowed or legislated. There's some laws, from incest, pedophilia, to many disgusting things we do not accept. And subhanallah, all praise and thanks belongs to God that we have something in Islam called fitra, or innate disposition, that tells us, this is not right. We can't just go ahead and follow our whims and desires.
And that I know you feel. I know your parents.
We have to be grounded in reality.
Might have a little more uncertainty about that, and that's
this thing. Kind of. I think we need to pay attention to his language right here. I don't know if he meant this. It sounds deliberate.
Who you are and to love who you love. And that I know you feel. I know your parents' generation might have a little more uncertainty about.
Your parents' generation, folks. I'm not going to call that outright blatant racism or bigotry, but it's between condescending and stupidity. Yeah, it's an ignorant comment. First of all, you have no idea. Basically, let's just break down what he's saying. What he's saying is, and I think, to be frank, I think he's literally targeting. He's either targeting the parents of immigrants who come from the eastern part of the world, Muslim countries. So the Muslim elders, the Muslim elderly people, who are, for the most part, outspoken in anti-LGBTQ, or he's talking about people who come from religious backgrounds, be they Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and the elderly class. Either or, it's a dumb and ignorant comment, as if, we're young, and by the way, I'm younger than Trudeau, but as if we know everything. Our generation knows everything. First of all, it's not true. There's a lot of pushback on the LGBTQ narrative from people from Justin Trudeau's crowd, from the 40s and 50-year-olds. But it starts with the teenagers. I mean, the teenagers are learning themselves. They're doing their own research these days. I can't remember the fact, and I don't like to pull out facts out of thin air, but there was one study done that a lot of teenagers and a lot of children these days are pushing back on the LGBTQ narrative. And moreover, I remember this, I think it was an American school, I can't remember where it was, that some teacher wanted to talk about something pride related or LGBTQ related, and they're like, oh man, boo. Now that's not to say that is a statistic, because I know that, for example, if we go to any particular college or whatever, you will find a great deal of amount of support for that, and people who have also said that they'll claim that they've done their research. But to me, a lot of those people have been indoctrinated. You could call my comment biased or whatnot, but I've, even from when I was on campus to what the campuses look like now. There's rainbow flags everywhere and pronouns that I've never even will probably understand. So yeah, I just thought this was a very condescending and it's almost an insult. What are you saying? You think our parents, our older generations, they don't understand these things? You think that they're old fashioned, they're outdated, they're expired? And then I think really what he's trying to say. Let's just continue.
And that's where this generation and your kids' generation can, show that look, the cost or the responsibility that comes with being in a free country that stands up for everyone's rights is that we will stand up for everyone's rights.
Yeah, we don't want that cost. Just so you understand, what he's saying is, us, our age group and the kids, they're just gonna integrate and assimilate, and they're gonna be they're understand, the cost. Just give up a little bit of your Islamic identity, give up your beliefs, what we call aqidah, give up your fundamentals. I don't think he understands how foundational. I don't think he understands how foundational this is. I mean, it's in the Qur'an, right? Qawm Lut alayhi salam. I don't think maybe he has, but he just probably hangs around too many liberals. Um, yeah, no, listen, my friend, nobody's going to be sacrificing their religious identity anytime soon for this short term gain, which doesn't even last. People, I mean, you should know this, man. When you push somebody up against the wall and threaten their identity, they're going to cling on their identity almost every single time. And that's why a lot of powers that be, governments, agencies, they resort to other tactics, unfortunately. I don't want to talk about the Rand report and this or other things, but yeah, the Muslim community needs to be conscious. I mean, this whole LGBTQ stuff it's very interesting. Anyways, I don't want to get into this video, but just looking at the funding, looking at how it started, the dodgy science behind it, and I feel like it's fading out. It's actually it's losing, even like I said, it's losing respect and credibility even in the liberal community.
Including people from the LGBT community who are facing increasing levels of violence and hatred.
This is interesting. I know you guys are probably getting sick of my voice, but
at the same time as the Muslim community is facing increasing levels of violence and hatred.
Let's listen to what he said. This is just false equivocation after false analogy.
Stand up for everyone's rights, including people from the LGBT community who are facing increasing levels of violence and hatred, at the same time as the Muslim community is facing increasing levels of violence and hatred. At the same time as the Asian community is facing.
Do you think, Justin, that the Muslim community and the LGBTQ community, LGBTQRS 2+, whatever it is, do you think that the amount of quote violence or discrimination that the LGBTQ community has faced, or people of that orientation or belief, whatever, that is similar to the Muslim community and Muslims around the world? For those of you who may or may not know, and because I think really what is coming to his mind right now is Uganda, right? There was something in Uganda recently. Kudos to them, by the way. But he's saying that I'm not saying I don't know what happened in Uganda, but just to be clear, this is not talking about violence, obviously, because I believe as a Muslim we need to follow the laws of this country and abide by the laws. But that doesn't mean we need to respect every single belief and ideology out there. So if I'm not mistaken, I think in Uganda they had passed a law that banning some homosexuality. I can't remember what it was, or making it a criminal offense. Now, okay, sorry, let's not sidetrack. It's been a long day. Listen to what he's saying, and I think just people are generally ignorant, or they just don't understand what's happened in the last 30 years. Palestine. Let's talk about suffering around the Muslim world. And there's different outlets and think tanks and even civil liberties groups that have documented all this. DOAM, that's one Muslim run think tank, but there's also a lot of non-Muslim ones that have documented this. Iraqi Body Count is another one. democracynow.org. Look, Palestine, Kashmir, Burma, Syria, Yemen. Okay, which, by the way, Yemen, right. I think Trudeau knows the involvement of the Canadian government in that. Mali, Central African Republic, Philippines, Bosnia, Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq, and the Canadian involvement in that. I mean, we don't. I think by estimates, I can't remember how many millions, but definitely over 1 million Muslim civilians in the last 30 years. Probably a lot more, maybe 2 million, have been slaughtered, killed. Right? Look at the Uyghurs. That's one thing, massive example. I've unfortunately did not mention. But what's happening with the Uyghurs? And if and when Justin Trudeau speaks about these things, it's just like a tweet. It's like a twerp. It's like a squeak here and there. It's just like a little press release, maybe a tweet, maybe at a news conference mentioning here. Not really much action though. Not many dollars, even though sometimes, unfortunately, the Canadian government is involved in these things. Thank God they're not as bad as the Americans or the Israelis, but even America is now talking about addressing the Uyghur crisis with the Uyghurs now. For maybe their own interest, I don't know. But the thing is that you cannot equate the suffering of LGBTQ with Muslims. Okay, Muslims have been, but Muslims are, have had horrendous things. Like look what happened in Iraq, the chemical weapons being used against Muslims in Fallujah. Chemical weapons being used against Muslims in Fallujah. Chemical weapons being used against Muslims in Fallujah. What? Okay, so don't equate the two. And number two, have you ever seen Trudeau? I think he spent 150 million on LGBTQ at least. The funding that goes into LGBTQ. It's Canadian NGOs are sometimes promoting this overseas. I mean, the interesting thing. I mean, and this I don't think it was Dave Chappelle, but it was someone else. Is Dave Chappelle did mention that it's some interesting things about LGBTQ, but the interesting thing is that the ties between the LGBTQ community and colonialism, and how it's used as a colonial and propaganda tool to actually indoctrinate or colonize societies and cultures ideologically in some ways. It's believe me, it's not that far-fetched. Can you imagine Canada doing business or being close with any country that's not pro-LGBTQ? I mean, it's basically impossible, because now it's seen as a quote-unquote, human right. Right? So, very interesting, right? I think Turkey could do that.
It's going in the wrong direction. The one thing we don't need right now is for communities that are facing hatred to start turning on each other rather than figure out.
Yeah, but we're not allies, buddy. This is the thing that you need to understand. We've never been allies. And Muslims out there who are listening need to understand neither the conservatives or the liberals are your friends. We as Muslims, we're here to serve everybody. When we go overseas, we're Canadian citizens. We're happy to be citizens. We contribute to this country. We want good for this country. We want good for everybody. But that doesn't mean, and this is the dangerous about nationalism, we don't think we're better than other people and better than other nationalities and better than other ethnicities. When we go and travel, and whether we're here or abroad, we're here to serve humanity. This can be easily debunked. It's a very clever argument. I'll give him that. It's a very clever argument. We what he's saying is, we the liberals, LGBTQ, Muslims who have been targeted by Islamophobia, we don't need to start turning on each other. We have this great alliance. Yeah, but Trudeau, that alliance was killing the Islamic identity, the Muslim identity, which he could care less about, right? He doesn't care. He just wants to come to the Ramadan iftars and have some chicken kebab and butter chicken, which I don't blame him because it is tasty, and the falafels and the shawarma is all tasty. Although we need to eat healthier in the Muslim community, but yeah, this is a very clever argument that I think we need to be careful of, because allies, these kinds of you can have. Let me use Glenn Greenwald as an example. Glenn Greenwald, he's a reporter, he's a journalist, he's a homosexual. And I've seen the imams and other Muslims do this. You reshare his articles. He's a great writer. He brings a lot of good issues to light and to our attention. But that doesn't mean we need to honor, respect, love, accept, approve of his lifestyle and his orientation. And we don't even believe it's disgusting, to be frank. So we can appreciate his work on one hand, but I don't think ever Muslims should stand on stage with him and say, we accept who you are, and here's the Islam flag, here's the here's the rainbow flag. We're gonna speak out against homophobia, and in hopes that you also speak out against Islamophobia. This kind of approach has not worked for Muslims in France, by the way. It has failed at all levels. You know what I'm saying? All these things I'm saying, you guys might think, okay, where's this guy getting this from? Because a lot of you already heard this stuff. If there's two of you even listening out there, really, my intention here is hopefully this video reaches some people who are not from a Muslim background and helps us connect in person, and maybe helps us build bridges, to be honest with you, because I think that's what needs to happen, especially from a dawah perspective. That I'm hoping that Muslims, inshallah ta'ala, by the will of God, by the permission of God, that Muslims can engage with more Christians, and that people can learn more about Islam and Muslims, because I think that's the next. It's an important step in the journey of Muslims in Canada here. Inshallah ta'ala, may Allah guide us into that which is best, and to connect people also with the wider Muslim community, whether that be in Canada or around the world. So yeah, it's just a bogus argument.
How to support each other, how to listen, how to understand each other, and work together. That's what Canada is, and it's not easy, and it causes.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point, right? What's the point of? I mean, let me just look at this logically. I hope. Hey, Justin, if you're listening to this, man, please don't repeat this argument again. If you have a Muslim who is sacrificing all their values, and we've seen this Muslims in Hollywood, Muslims in politics, all kinds of unfortunately fahisha and disgusting things, Muslims involved in bad things, and they've had to strip away their identity, sometimes literally. What's the point of sacrificing their akhirah, their hereafter, their values, their families, their communities, for a few people to like them? I mean, that wasn't even the message of the prophets of God, right? The prophets of God, they didn't come. That's not even the message of the Qur'an or the Sunnah. And I encourage everybody to read the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Peace and blessings be upon all the prophets of God. I encourage everyone to read the Qur'an if you can. But what's the point of prophets of God? Obviously, they didn't come when they came to deliver the message of monotheism and to say that worship God. God is one. I mean, all of them had chances to compromise, but they didn't. I mean, if you look at this from a logical perspective, you have an identity. Let's say that identity is Canadian. Okay, the moment you stop paying taxes, the moment you move overseas and or rip up your passport or do something stupid or just uh you know you know your Canadian identity comes into question, right? So my point here is every identity has some parameters, has some limits. So my problem with this argument is that now Justin is trying to play the role of a theologian. I feel like my, I don't know, this is maybe thinking too much of myself probably, but I think if the Liberal Party actually watched my entire reaction to this, they could probably actually score a lot of political points. They could reform their message and score a lot of political points with the Muslim community. Because I really feel like in the future that a lot of people are going to drop it, and it's going to die down. I think that the LGBTQ narrative is actually going to die down a bit. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope. I don't think it's going to be as popular in Canada and around the world as it is. I mean, especially the U.S., which is the main promoter, and other European countries. But this is just not a good argument that he's saying. Sacrifice your identity, because he doesn't understand the Muslim identity and how intrinsic, how fundamental this is to the Muslim identity, right?
Clashes in cultures, but when it comes right down to it, the ability to stand up for everyone's rights is what leaves Canada the freest and the most successful country on earth.
Yeah, a little bit of propaganda there, buddy. Look, we Muslims, a lot of us could say love Canada, like Canada, we appreciate Canada, we are Canadian, as Tim Hortons. The most successful country, the freest country? No, probably not. No, taxes are pretty high here. It's pretty expensive. I don't know where you've been living, dude. The housing is pretty expensive here. Freest, definitely not the freest. We don't have freedom of speech. Can Muslims, first of all, can people criticize the LGBTQ narrative and not have death threats? No. Can people burn the Qur'an, a'udhu billah, in Canada? Probably they can, right? As we saw in Sweden or something like that. Can people, and people have, right? Can people insult the prophets of God? Yes, they can. That's not free speech. That's more like shouting fire in a crowded theater and instigating hatred and provoking religious minorities. Be it the insulting of Jesus Christ or Moses. Peace and blessings be upon them. Most successful country, yeah, okay. It's a good country. It's a great country. But it didn't get here with liberal ideology to where it didn't get to where it is today through liberal ideology. That's for sure.
Appreciate that.
Prime Minister,
Thank you.
very important question. Thank you, Ahmad. Thanks, Ahmad. That was a good question. There's a lot of people's mind.
So yeah, there's a lot to be said about this video, but I think it's late. I think the main point here is that then I see the next generation, inshallah ta'ala, of Muslims being able to articulate, debunk these kinds of arguments. Okay? I mean, I just happened to go to the timestamp where he says, yeah, Islam has strong opinions on the same way that, the Christian religious right has strong opinions. I think Justin Trudeau needs to attend some durus or halakat or Islamic courses, to be honest with you. Maybe even study his own Bible for a moment. But like I said, I see, inshallah ta'ala, a very positive future. I think the LGBTQ ideology, narrative, and the culture is going to either be stagnant or it's gonna calm down. I mean, yeah, there's a chance that, like I said, people will be, in 10, 20 years, people will be identifying as time-traveling cyborgs from the multiverse in another dimension. That is a possibility. I'm not saying that's not a possibility. It's that the desires and the whims and desires and people could just get worse and worse with the apps and the technology and the multimedia and the mainstream media. But I do see a lot of people pushing back, and that's a positive thing. And it's the right to, right? So, yeah, healthy discussion. healthy discussion. If you want to have healthy discussion, it requires acknowledging truths. And what I saw in this video was, unfortunately, some propaganda, some lies, some misconstruing things, some overstepping boundaries, some condescending arrogance, some condescending remarks, some arrogance. Like I said, I'm not anti Trudeau or something like that. I acknowledge, yeah, maybe he's done a few good things, but I'm definitely not a fan of him either. And I pray may Allah guide him, may Allah guide all of us. And like I said, I'm hoping, inshallah ta'ala, for more, I think, the positives that will come out of this. And I've seen a lot of Christians commend the Muslim community. I think a lot of positive, even atheists, a lot of people who are tired of the LGBTQ ideology being pushed on to people and promoted and stuck in your face everywhere for an entire month. I mean, nobody has an entire month these days. I mean, there's more racism than we haven't even done much for racism in that respect, right? But anyways, and please don't equate LGBTQ to racism. Anyways, the thing is that a lot more can be said, and I pray people who are more qualified than me can and will respond to this, and I think that will happen in the future. I think there'll be more dawah, more outreach, more positive relations created, and more importantly, more understanding. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to the truth. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.